House Higher Education Committee to order. We have two measures before us for hearing this afternoon, Senate Bill 91 and Senate Bill 161. I think we're a little light on membership as people go. The chair doesn't intend to take action on either of these, so if there's not objection, I know the Senate is still in session. I'm going to let the gentleman go ahead and present his measure. We'll ask questions, and again, we'll make sure we have seated a quorum, certainly before we vote, and hope before we end the presentation. So with that, Senator, if you'd like to come, Chairman of Senate Finance, if you would tell us about your measure. Senate Bill 91, do you have the substitute that was made for us? I think it was your language. So we have the substitute we're working off of is LC 392227S. Is that what you have, Senator? If not, we can get you a copy. This is the language your office brought to our office to create.
And I may have picked up the wrong one, but
Yeah.
I
Can we get that down to, we're bringing that down there too, Senator. Okay. Okay. So we're working off a substitute, LC 392227S. Senator, you are on.
All right, and what this bill is about really is eliminating some unneeded bureaucracy, which I know we try to do. The medical schools in Georgia, and I will tell you, I'm an anesthetist. I'm in the medical field besides being in finance. But the medical schools in Georgia, such as Emory, where I attended, don't have to go through a redundant accreditation locally. And I'm talking specifically about the private medical schools. When Emory had a dental school, they also didn't. So it's been kind of a gray area. We're trying to clarify that. And they are the dental schools, and this one that we're looking at in particular is the Georgia School of Orthodontics that will be putting out 18 orthodontics each year. The first class will graduate this September, and then the what they call CODA, the Commission on Dental Accreditation of the American Dental Association, accredits them, and at that time they'll be fully accredited. So rather than doing the state, private college accreditation each year, which is a lot of time and some expense, we wanted to make them equal to the other medical schools and how Emory Dental School was at the time, and go with the national accreditation on this. And there were several people that were concerned about it, and I know Augusta looked at it because they do put out 2 or 3 orthodontic physicians each year. And we also heard from the Dental Association, and they asked that we tighten the language to say specifically an orthodontic school. I think they had some concerns about dental hygienists and different things there, so we agreed to do that. And then the state post-secondary private accreditation group also asked for some changes, and we worked with them and made all the changes they asked for in this. So I don't think there's any other opposition to this as it stands. And again, we're trying to just get them on an equal footing with the others and go by the national accreditation, which is very extensive. And I believe you guys have been given some handouts from the Georgia School of Orthodontics on that accreditation process. That's maybe a simple explanation, but that's what this bill does.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any questions? The committee have questions of the Senator? Again, we're going to give everybody an opportunity, since this sub is just being presented to you today. We'll give everybody an opportunity and have this up early next week to move it on through the process. But I want to give everybody an opportunity to look at it, and we'll take testimony. If there are questions, I have number. Is that Representative Gardner, number 22?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is an area I don't know very much about. So private medical schools and dental schools are regulated in a different way than a state medical school. And
then they're actually all accredited nationally by the same group.
Okay.
But if you're a private university here, you have to go through also the state non-public accreditation, which really doesn't know that much about the,
Anything,
necessarily the medical
yeah.
area or the dental area. So what they have is legislation that has exempted those from that state legislation. Schools such as Emory, Mercer,
Right.
that are private don't go through this. This was an attempt to clarify it for dental schools as well, but at the request of the American Dental Association, or I'm sorry, the Georgia Dental Group, we did specifically just say orthodontics at this time, so that they would be treated the same as every other medical school and dental school and using the national accreditation. So,
Follow up? So am I correct then that schools like Emory and Mercer, who are private medical schools, are already exempted?
Correct.
From the regulation by the non-public post-secondary group, whatever that
right, they're
agency
in the
is.
same category, and really, the expertise is with either, CODA, the Commission on Dental Accreditation, and the appropriate medical school group. And so we're trying to put them in the same category as everybody else and say you'll be like everyone else, and the national group, which has the expertise on this, will be the appropriate body. And those that do the state accreditation on private schools had asked for some language changes in here, and we made those changes to satisfy them.
And is there a private dental school?
There's not anymore. There was Emory, or I attended,
But they
and
were
they were
exempt.
exempt at the time, but they don't exist anymore.
I know, much to our.
They've got a nice museum over there, though.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. I'm sorry, I just walked in, so I didn't catch the very beginning of your presentation, but I just want to be just curious to know, does this bill have any impact on Morehouse School of Medicine?
It does not.
Okay.
It's the Morehouse is private, and they are
Okay.
already exempt. Mercer's already exempt. Emory's already exempt. And when Emory had a dental school, they were exempt. This just puts them in the same category as a Morehouse or a Mercer or an Emory, and that we will use the National Accreditation Group to certify their accreditation.
Okay, thank you for that.
Further questions? Number 14 is it Representative Parton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for the bill. Does this bill require an additional requirement for any, I'm looking at line 23, any orthodontics or residency program to have that 450,000 surety bond or letter of credit? Is that an additional requirement on all institutions?
It would be, and dental, the way this is done, it's very narrowly crafted. It's not any dental school. If there's one in the future, that'll be an issue. But any orthodontic school, and actually right now, their current bond, I believe, was about 300,000, and the state private accreditation had asked to increase this to 450. I wasn't sure why we needed to go to 450, but I got an agreement to do it.
All right, thank you, Senator.
And thank you for raising that question. We may have some folks that are able to, talk to that, where that number came from, and that's, again, why we'll carry this over and make sure we look at the language before we,
Okay.
again, everybody's seeing it today. Further questions? If there, no, we're going to carry this, again, I'm going to carry this over because it was a substitute. Everybody's seeing that. I want to give everybody an opportunity to look at it. I wouldn't expect, I sometimes have, in my years here, have complained about being handed a substitute, sometimes longer than this, and being asked to vote on it real quickly. So this is substantive change. And I've spoken with the senator that this, in terms of our schedule of legislative days, this might cost us one day to carry that over. So I think to give the committee the opportunity to look, give Representative Park to maybe find out where the number 450 came from, we'll get on with it. And Senator, if there's no changes to it, you need not come back.
Okay.
When we meet again, we'll get it out for you, and we'll be in contact. I know y'all still have a debate calendar going on in the Senate, so if
We do. I told them to keep talking a long time over there.
if I'm sure they're senators, sir, they'll do that without instruction.
Yeah.
So if the committee doesn't have any further questions out there, I'm going to let him get back to business over at the Senate, and then we'll go to public comment on the item. And Senator, we'll keep you up to date on anything if there's a question raised.
Okay.
Thank you
Mr.
very much.
Chairman.
Thank you for spending the time with us. Can we check and see, is there any, I know there's a sign-up sheet. Did anybody come here today to spread wisdom on the committee on Senate Bill 91? And also, let me add, is there anyone in the audience that has an interest in this that doesn't have a copy of the substitute? I failed to ask that earlier. We can get a copy out to anyone that has it. Anyone that wishes to speak to Senate Bill 191? Come on around. If you would, all the way around. Oh, you're going to the stand-up microphone. That's okay. You may sit down or stand at the podium. Yes, ma'am. If you just tell us who you are and who you're with.
Callie Michaels, Southern Strategy Group, on behalf of the Georgia School of Orthodontics. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I think Senator Huffstetler did an excellent job explaining the piece of legislation. Just wanted to offer, myself, if y'all have any specific questions or would like any additional information, I am available. So,
Thank you. Any questions, Ms. Michaels? Questions? Thank you very much. You did a good job. Any further speakers on Senate Bill 91? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Come. Yes, sir. Mr. Executive Director, we've met, but tell the committee that, introduce yourself for
That's
all the
right.
committee members.
I am the Executive Director of the Non-Public Post-Secondary Education Commission, and we were the agency that it was involved with the school. We provide authorization, not accreditation. Accreditation's through these regional national entities which are overseen by the U.S. Department of Education. So authorization is a little different. You may have specific questions for me. Representative Park, you mentioned the $450,000. Where that item came from, every school that is authorized by, in this state with the tuition level of where this Georgia School of Orthodontics is, has to have a bond, a surety bond of $200,000 or a line of credit, letter of credit with us. Additionally, if the school were to fail, and this language came out of discussions in the Senate with some of the senators, if this school were to fail, in addition to having access to the $200,000 in the surety bond that they have, through our tuition guarantee trust fund, they have an additional $250,000 in access that students would have to unearned tuition. So that $450,000, that's where that came from, because the idea is that for when a school starts in this state on the whole and nationally, the first 5 years is when it's most likely to fail. So the idea was that we would provide a modicum of student protections in this bill for any school, not just this one, but any future medical or dental school, or orthodontic school that may open up in the future. That's in that 5-year period. That's why that's there.
Right, so correct, so that's basically for the protection of the students that would go there.
Correct, because if a school is exempt from us, there is no student protection in the form of a bond or access to our tuition guarantee trust fund.
Understand. You stand for questions. Representative Gardner wants to chat with you a second. Representative
Again,
Gardner.
Mr. Chairman. So are the other private schools required to post any kind of bond?
Only up to the first 5 years of their existence. So for example, Emory, they're exempt because they fit under the code section where, can't remember the exact year, 1952 or whatever, they're exempt based upon being a historically private school, so they would not post a bond. But any new school would have to, and the size of the bond depends on the size of the tuition of the school.
So would this be just for it says 5 years.
Right, for the 5 years.
I'm sorry. So a school like Argosy, which just failed, this is not quite on topic, but did they provide some kind of bond?
Yes, they do. Now, Argosy is a different situation. They have been in existence more than 5 years, so
Right.
traditionally their bond would go away, so we wouldn't have access to that. However, there was a change. I don't know if it's a change of ownership or it was some kind of substantial change that back in 2017 or whatever year, they had to re-up their bond. So their bond is still in existence now. So we're going to have access to $200,000 for their online campus, $200,000 for their face-to-face Atlanta campus, plus the tuition guarantee trust fund for both campuses. So we'll have almost $1 million that we could potentially offer to students who have unearned tuition. Now, it doesn't mean that we'll be paying that out, it's because they have to meet certain standards, but that is there. And so that is where our agency comes in as far as student protections, and that's a perfect example.
Representative Garner, any further questions? Thank you, sir. I
Thank
think
you.
we got that covered. Any further speakers on Senate Bill 91? Again, we're going to carry this over. We'll meet early next week to take action should the committee choose to do so. So if there's question or comment, concern on the substitute, please let me know so I can convey that to the senator in fairness since we let him go. If there's no further questions or comment on Senate Bill 91, we're going to move to Senate Bill 161. And let me get to the, do we have Senate Bill 161?
It should be, it's a smaller copy.
Ah.
Didn't print correct.
Senate Bill 161 is the, on the short paper, it's on the letter size paper. And I'm going to just place this out. Senator Tippins was tied up in the debate and unable to get here. So if I can, just allow me to give the committee a quick overview. We're going to be in the same position to hold this over for next week. What Senator Tippins wishes to do in qualifications for the Hope Scholarship, line 22 of the bill, or the Zell Miller Scholarship, there was language passed some years ago to provide a 0.5 bump for certain courses when computing your eligibility to have a hope as you go into college. And so if you made in a course of a certain rigor, and again, we don't decide, this is not courses that are decided, we're not changing the courses that qualify for this, but in the courses that qualify, if you're in that course and you make a B, you would get a 3.5. If you make a C, you would get a 2.5. The issue is if you make an A, you get a 4. So in quick math for me, one could be in one of these courses and make an 81 and get a 3.5, and you can have a 99 average and only get a 4. And so if you look down on the lines, the senator wishes to add basically an A, a 4.5 to this for the grade calculation. So that is the policy before the group for students that are excelling in these courses of higher rigor. You reward them basically for the A. There is a question that I'm going to research further about the applicability of the bill or when it would become effective. In Section 2 of January 1st, 2020, it seems that most folks graduate from high school in a May semester. So I would suggest if this is something that the committee agrees to and we want to move forward on, that we might want to make this effective so that it would be effective to this year's graduating class. I mean, if it's good policy, it's good policy for seniors that graduate in 2019. If it's not, then we can take action accordingly. And then I would just ask the committee if they're interested. The pro tem, I believe, a number of years ago set forth, and I'm going to ask somebody, quickly from higher ed out there to come and talk to us. But there were certain levels of courses with higher rigor in colleges that had this same thing. If one made a B, one got a 3.5. I would suggest that if we think this is a good thing, that we would consider, if the senator would, placing that on his bill to retain Hope. One of the things that bothers me the most about the Hope Scholarship is if you have someone in a degree of high rigor, but they couldn't otherwise stay in college without Hope, if they're, I don't know what the toughest degree at Georgia Tech is. I was going to say we had Representative Reeves had the football coach over today. We could just ask him. But let's just say electrical engineering is a degree of high rigor that would fit here. If one was having a hard time keeping the B average, keeping the 3.0, and if I lose it, I can't stay in school, so right now I got to drop my major back a degree. I would hate for that to be the case if you had excelled and had that A that would, if a 4.5 would have kept you over that. So just something we can bring, we'll bring the language back when we consider this bill, and I would throw that open for discussion at that time. But if
that had been the law in 1996, my parents would have been real happy.
Well, and that's important, and that's important to me, Representative. So, well, I have two lights blinking. Remember, be nice. I'm not the author of the bill, but I'll do the best I can. Number 17, who is that? Representative Couch. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, just one comment to me. This bill sounds like it's just clarifying the weighted GPA, and most colleges colleges should be able to handle that because lots of other states are doing this. So and I just want to make clear that this is what it does, and I'm surprised that we apparently didn't do it before, is that when students come in with a GPA of 5.0 or even higher, you know that this is what is coming from because it's also only an indication of what the rigor of classes they took. So that I think that would be a very easy measure to do that. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And actually, this is kind of similar to what she said. So I'm not sure because I have not been in high school for a very long time. But isn't it on a 5.0 scale where these AP classes are actually worth an entire quality point and not just half a point? And wouldn't it be easier to just adopt the same scale that they use in high school instead of dropping it down by half a point?
Yes, ma'am. Enlighten us.
Sure. Good afternoon, committee. Kaylee Noggle, the interim president of the Georgia Student Finance Commission. We started calculating high school GPAs as an agency for every high school, public and private, in the state in 2007 based on legislation that was passed in 2005. So we get high school transcripts from hundreds of thousands of students a year. The current calculation is in law, and it is based on a 4.0 scale. Actually, current code in this section says the maximum cumulative GPA is a 4.0. So under that, we have been weighting, according to law, AP, IB, and dual enrollment courses a half a letter grade. So a 3 to a 3.5, up to a maximum of 4. You're correct, the intent would be to, we would not change the maximum of a 4.0, but individual course grades would be, of A would be weighted from a 4 to a 4.5, and then that would assist, and I believe the Chairman Timmons and I have spoken about this, his desire for students to do really well in some courses and not so well in other courses would give them the benefit of that additional weighting on the A.
Can you address Representative Clark's the 5.0 scale? Are you?
Some high schools use a 5.0 scale. For our purposes, for Hope Scholarship eligibility, any weighting done at the high school level, they actually report to us, and we, for lack of a better word, strip those weights off. We then take the raw score, convert it to a 4.0 scale, re-weight it according to this code section, and then give them their final Hope Scholarship eligibility.
And let me ask a question, and I'll turn your mic back. And that is to keep everything level because certain high schools weight a course more than others. And just because you're in this high school and you would make that grade on that course and get a 5.0, you can't roll it in with somebody else that made that same grade in another system and got a 4.0.
That's correct. Grading scales are controlled at local school level, including what they weight, be it some schools weight honors courses in addition to AP and IB, and so the state's decided as a state we will uniformly, for Hope purposes, do it the same way.
Normalize it, and then
that's correct.
Did that? Okay, that get Representative Gardner would.
Mr. Chairman, you mentioned changing the implementation date. I just wanted to hear from her.
That's a great question.
There's certainly choices there. It's certainly on our list to follow up with Chairman Tippins and see what his intent would be. There's a couple of ways to do it, either for courses taken on and after a specific date that the bill becomes effective. So after, in this case, January 1, if a student takes a course, you could also do it based on the date of a student graduates. So students graduating on or after January 1. Moving it up to May, I'm sure we can do it. It would be a centralized change in our office to handle that for all the high schools, but I'm sure we can get it done if that's what we need to do.
It's manageable, in other words.
I believe so. My tech guys aren't here, but I'm going to speak for them.
No, this is your opportunity to write checks they have to cash. Let me ask you one follow-up, and then we have another question. So you raise a good point here. So if I'm a senior or if I'm a junior, and I've been going through taking some of these courses that qualify, and I've made A's, and today, and if the law doesn't change, those A's are 4s as they come into your system. That's how they are today. If we change this, my question would be, and it's a good one, do you contemplate that mean that grades you get going forward after the effective date get a 4.5, but grades you got beforehand only get a 4?
I do not anticipate that we would change any student that has already graduated high school. I think
Oh,
that
certainly.
the language is a little ambiguous, I think, and we could look at it either way, and would probably talk to the chairman regarding his intent as well as legislative council and see what the best route is there. But it could go either way.
But help us perfect the language to do that, please,
Sure.
because we don't want to leave that, because I know if we do, you'll be wrestling with, there'll be students and moms and dads all over,
We
all
appreciate that.
159 counties that will go, but what about this? But help me here to understand, this would apply if we make the effective date, that we want this to apply to anybody entering college after July 1st of this year, or matriculating after that date. I guess what I'm trying to get to, if we affect, we need to affect graduates after a certain time. Is it going to count for all of the courses they took in high school? I think that's a clear thing for us to understand
Sure.
what it's going to do. Does this count on classes going forward, or does this count on classes that
We
have
have-
been tallied and then will now be recalculated a different way? That's a huge difference for people that are currently in school.
It is, and we have made changes both ways previously. I believe, and you referenced the Speaker Pro Tem Jones and her bill from 2016 that was weighting college courses.
Right.
I believe when we implemented that, we did that based on courses taken on or after when that, and I'll
Okay.
double check that, but I believe we did it based on when the coursework was taken, because the point of that bill was to incent students and to encourage them to
take them.
take those courses. So if they were already taken, then that would not apply.
Okay. Number 24, who we got there? Representative Weedower, please.
So, asking this question for a friend, I noticed that if I choose to take a class of rigor and receive an F, I don't get a 0.5. Is that mentality behind that?
That's correct. However, under current practice, you do. This would actually change that component as well.
I think a no-show is not going to be rewarded with a 0.5. This is the.
We would agree.
Asking for a friend. That was one of the best ones I've heard so far this year. We're going to nominate that for a top 10. Chairman Smyer, what do you think? Asking for.
Let me put that back. You get 0.5 for F?
Under current practice, yes, sir. Mhm.
I might re-enroll.
The gentleman is wise beyond his years here at the House.
At least you get some point.
Like double jeopardy.
Double jeopardy, the man says. Do you have anything further?
I'm just trying to see the point of it. Because the only thing you're doing is adding Zell Miller to the equation. It's already what we're doing other than, so explain to me that.
So, I certainly don't want to speak for the chairman, but in our conversations, I believe he was trying to assist students that may have done poorly or not as well as they could have in certain courses. Maybe they got a few C's. But and those courses may be weighted or not weighted, but then they did really well in some courses and get an A. If they receive the extra bump there, it's going to help give them the same benefit that the student that got the B or the C would have gotten. It will impact students going from either not HOPE eligible to becoming HOPE eligible, or those students that are already meeting eligibility for HOPE to become Zell Miller eligible.
That's the point. That
Mr. Chairman Smyer, in talking with the senator about it, I think that's just it. It's kind of like, people laugh at me going all the way back to a sports analogy. Once you make an out in baseball, you can never bat 1,000 again. You can get 999 hits out of 1,000, and you only hit 990. And I think the point here is, if you had somebody in high school that maybe weren't as focused as they should have been as a freshman or sophomore, and they got several C's. Well, if you get several C's, it takes a whole bunch of A's to get to a 3.7 to get Zell Miller. Even if you're hitting for the cycle, your senior year, if you're making 4.0, 4.0, 4.0. So if you get the 0.5 on a course of high rigor, it helps you. It helps you swing back. Now, that's a policy decision before this committee. If we want to do that, that's a valid policy decision thing. But I believe that's what's trying to happen. Is if you're trying to get to a 3.7 and all you can put on the scorecard is a 4.0, it's hard to get over. If you can put a 4.5, it kind of drags well, I mean, add it up. A 2.0 and a 4.5 is 6.5 is 3.2 as opposed to, a 4 and a 2 is a 3. I mean, it gets you more points. So that's a question. We have some more here. Representative Gardner.
Thank you
and
for
then
allowing me another question.
and then we're coming
Remind me about the Zell Miller. Is it true that you have to be the valedictorian of your class, or?
No, ma'am, that is but one way that you can become eligible. But the most students qualify by earning a 3.7 high school GPA according to our calculation, as well as a qualifying ACT or SAT test score.
Do you have a number of how many homeschooled children actually qualify for Zell Miller?
Well, and there are different qualifications for homeschooled students depending on type of the home study program that they're enrolled in, be it through an accredited distance education program or through an unaccredited program. Students that are using an unaccredited program cannot qualify based on using their GPA or test score, but rather I think their standard is a 93rd percentile in one of the nationally administrated SAT or SAT test scores, or they can apply retroactively after completing 30 college hours with a certain GPA. We do have the numbers. I don't have them with me. We'll be happy to follow up with you.
Thank you.
Number 11 again. Is that Representative Bentley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious to know, it sounds like this is going to increase, if this passes, it could increase the number of students that are eligible for HOPE, which in turns mean we'll have more students getting HOPE scholarship. Are we financially prepared for that?
There's not an official fiscal note on this bill that I'm aware of. We've not been asked by audits to prepare anything. We've done a little bit of preliminary looking. I think the impact to the number of students going from not HOPE eligible to HOPE eligible is pretty de minimis. I think there's a greater impact on the number of students going from HOPE eligible to Zell Miller eligibility. And there would certainly be a cost associated with that.
You were continuing to look. I thought you had more. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry? I'm just thinking out loud. I'm good. Yes, ma'am. Representative Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you as always. So for clarification purposes, are we focusing on high school students who are going into college? We're not talking about trying to help college students maintain their HOPE scholarship. Is that correct?
The bill as currently drafted and passed in the Senate focuses on high school students and high school GPAs. As the chairman referenced, there is another component of the maintaining eligibility once you're in college. HB 801 passed during the 2016 session that allows course weighting for college students if they are enrolled in specific courses leading to a high demand STEM field. There was a task force put together at the time that identified those courses, and we know when a student in the colleges, if a student enrolls in one of those courses, they also get a weight on grades B, C, or D.
Chairman, one more
Please.
follow-up question. So, we're giving students an opportunity to increase their GPA through an AP course, a dual credit, which I'm assuming is joint enrollment,
Correct.
and international baccalaureate courses. With the joint enrollment aspect, similar to the line of questioning of Representative Bentley, are there concerns regarding costs? Because I know we passed legislation capping joint enrollment programs. And then if you could also provide some more detail on what these international baccalaureate courses are.
Sure. So those are already the courses that are identified that are already weighting. So what this bill does is just add the fact that we would now weight a letter grade of A. We are already weighting course grades of B, C, D, and F in AP Advanced Placement, International Baccalaureate, or dual enrollment, degree level dual enrollment courses. So it doesn't open the door to any additional courses being weighted other than what's already provided for. It just changes, except for those where students scored an A in the same course. Advanced Placement, International Baccalaureate are both standardized courses of study that high schools offer. AP courses are curriculum instructed by the College Board, and instructors have to have that certification to teach those courses. And International Baccalaureate is a similar but yet different type of program from Advanced Placement.
Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, then we will invite, of course, Senator Tippins in to further. And to be clear, I don't want to complicate his measure if there's some pause about as you mentioned about 801 in 2016. It's just it may be for next year, but it's just, it is important, I think, when we're talking about these career, opportunities that we're keeping people in, these high-demand careers, that I certainly would hate for people to step back from one of those because they had, if they lost hope, they would not be able to stay in school. And so we sort of start them into a downward spiral. So if that's a different discussion for a different, session, a different bill, perfectly happy to wait. I don't want to confuse one thing with the other. So let's wait for Chairman Tippins to come and speak to us. We'll hold this over. We have one more. Representative Gardner.
I was just concerning about the cost and whether or not, if we are going to go forward with this bill, would it be appropriate for you to work on some numbers for us so we decide how we would vote when it comes to the floor? Should it come to the floor?
Sure, I think we can certainly do that. I can tell you that all the impact would be to lottery funding, to our
Right.
lottery funding as opposed to the state general fund.
And we, again, I'll follow up with Chairman Tippins. I believe they had some estimates, maybe not a formal thing. If you have the time to work on that or put
Sure.
something formal together, please do that.
Okay.
And then we'll follow up with Chairman Tippins on his feedback on the finance.
We'd be happy to.
Are there further questions of Ms. Noble on this? If not, did anyone else come to speak to us about Senate Bill 161 today? We are working from the Senate version. I failed to say it, LC 33 7810S. Any further wisdom on Senate Bill 161? We're going to hold both of these measures over. We'll either meet on I believe we have committee days next Tuesday and Wednesday. So we will, I will notice it will either be Tuesday or Wednesday, or our normal meeting on Wednesday. But we will meet on these and we will look to take action on them. So I'll look for the wisdom of the committee at that time, and we'll try to provide this additional information. Is there anything else before the committee this afternoon? Anything else we need to cover? If not, everyone, thanks for coming. If there's nothing else to cover, we'll stand adjourned without objection. See no objection, we are adjourned.